Good morning, and my name is Arjun Vishwanathan. I'm the Chief Research Officer at Strategic, and I will be your host today at the Connected CIO webinar on behalf of Dell Technologies, Intel, and Strategic. Our theme today is the ability for organizations to accelerate to a connected future. One of the reasons we're focusing on this is that the pandemic has forced businesses to digitally transform in ways that would normally have taken years, perhaps, to accomplish. Now, having said that, businesses have been, of course, transforming digitally at speed to not just survive and exist, but to also thrive. Organizations are increasingly investing in adopting solutions built around multi cloud, edge computing, the explosion in data, and data management, of course. The modernization of networking equally, as well as the build out to 5G as the industry progresses, is also matters that require to be examined in far greater detail. This discussion in today's episode is going to focus around the convergence of edge computing and 5G to drive significantly disproportionate value acceleration within industry. Because by leveraging edge computing and harnessing the power of 5G, organizations will have the ability to build a strong foundation to enable turning their data into actionable insights and drive enhanced revenues. With this as the driver, we would like to kick off today with me coming and presenting the research that we recently conducted about the technology drivers that will power industry and power acceleration to a connected future. This research was conducted across multiple large organizations within India, and I will now be presenting the findings of the research report. Hello, and I'm Arjun Vishwanathan. I'm going to be your host today. And as I welcome you to an absolutely gorgeous day today, it falls upon me to launch and to introduce you to a fairly serious piece of industry research that we conducted in association with our partners at Dell Technology. And as a culmination of months of painstaking effort and deep industry research, I'm pleased to present to you the 2021 report on what we call Accelerating to a Connected Future, which is fundamentally a study of Indian industry's evolution in adopting emerging technologies for value acceleration. Over the course of the next 5 minutes, I'm going to show you snippets of results from our report. At the outset, I would like to thank our partners, Dell Technologies, for sponsoring and partnering us in driving this very, very deep industry research. Now, the question that begs consideration is why the research was conducted in the first place. In September of 2020, Mr. Michael Dell clearly came out amongst many, many other facets of the economic outlook for 2021 and beyond. One of the things that Mr. Dell spoke about were 6 key technologies that, in his view and in his perspective and his rich experience, would be the accelerators of Indian industry as well as global industries, acceleration to value and to becoming connected enterprises and intelligent enterprises of the future. Those 6 technologies were edge computing, 5G, artificial intelligence and machine learning, the whole concepts of multi-cloud orchestration and architecture, software-defined networking, and data management. Now, while, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not really going to focus on each of these technologies because most of it is obviously fairly evident to you. It is interesting, however, to note that Mr. Dell clearly articulated this in such supreme fashion when he said there's a great speeding up going on, and many individuals are calling it the great acceleration. This particular interview in its literary form is available on the internet, and you can please kindly feel free to read through what is really a fascinating set of conversations that Mr. Dell had. Moving on, amongst the very many questions that we asked about technology and its overall convergence with business strategy, we asked organizations, CFOs, CEOs, CIOs, and other eminent corner office leaders about their drivers or their reasons for adopting innovation as a business strategy. Because innovation, I think, over the last 16 odd months has truly been one of those imperatives that has driven organizations on to more intelligence as well as more resilience. And when we ask them why innovation would be so critical in the months and the years to come, uh, I'm not surprised at all that 39% of organizations said that innovation would help them drive better customer relationships and outcomes, which is fundamentally increased loyalty, increased wallet share, retention of customers, and so on and so forth. Very, very important, as is evident from the fact that the digital customer of today is very different from the customers that we were about 2 years back. Because each customer today, as a digital customer in this digital economy, seems and is expected of very, very diverse experiences from brands that he or she associates with. Equally important was better returns, which is fundamentally business returns and business metrics, which are improved margins from improved products and services. The third priority that organizations spoke to us about from the perspective of leveraging innovation was to be able to drive higher competitiveness. And of course, the business agility that is so, so imperative to quickly respond to market opportunities. No surprises on number four as a priority was that organizations expected that innovation would drive and craft the ability for employees to be far, far more productive by perhaps even engaging in new roles and new digital skills that were hitherto not available. And of course, the last priority, or in its ranking at 24%, was improved business intelligence, something that we've been speaking about when we speak about the intelligent enterprises of tomorrow, with data as the base foundational pillar for organizations to drive resilient intelligence and resilient insights. Moving forward, as we went deeper within industry, spoke to tons of folks around the whole concepts of if innovation were to be so critical, what would equally and subsequentially be the urgency and the enthusiasm to adopt these six technologies in their ability to power innovation, craft resilience, and build truly the future intelligent enterprises of tomorrow. We went and asked them their priorities on how they would deploy technology. And it comes as no surprise that one out of almost two, at 47%, data management was one of the most important and prioritized technologies that organizations would deploy within the next 6 months, for the simple reason that as organizations are generating more data, its judicious management as a means of such growth is considered potent to be able to drive an insights based and actionable acceleration towards hyper competitiveness and differentiation. And therefore, data management, given the vast amounts of data that we are generating today, came in at number one. And a close number two was multi cloud for its simple and most basic ability to help organizations craft hyperspeed as well as hyperscale and transform workloads while providing for infra as well as app modernization. Came in at 40%. At number three was artificial intelligence and machine learning. No surprises here because as AI and ML adoption embraces end-to-end thinking and consisting of architectural principles over siloed solutions, the convergence of data management as well as AI ML becomes critical and very, very potent as a tool for organizations to be able to drive vastly differential outcomes. At number four came in software defined networking with its promise of simplifying and centralizing control of the enterprise network management domain as a whole. Uh, 5G, with all its promise of lower latencies and a facilitation of increased access to information on the go, came in at number five at 19% of respondents saying this would be priority number five, was closely linked to edge computing, which came in at 18% of respondents saying they would focus on edge computing over the next 6 months because of its ability to deliver direct on ramp to a company's preferred cloud platform. So when you kind of boil this all together, this graph or this illustration is to be read as the percentage of respondents who rate each of these technologies for its most impact on business outcomes. And moving forward, and as I bring this, the launch and the introduction of the 2021 Accelerating to a Connected Future report of Indian industry to a close, is that there's a very high sense of urgency and understanding an acknowledgement within industry of judicial fiscal prudence to be able to make real the potential of technology's convergence with business strategy towards higher outcomes. Because 56% of all respondents displayed a very high sense of urgency when they spoke about their desire to adapt to as well as adopt and deploy technology within the next 12 months, which is clearly a sign of a fair level of urgency there. And it comes perhaps as no surprise that given the sense and the levels of urgency within industry, pretty much all respondents spoke and highlighted and acknowledged that they will be expending considerable fiscal investments as well as budgets towards technology adoption at an enterprise-wide level, ranging from between 10% to 15%, beg your pardon, of their overall budgets. So clearly, uh, the backdrop of the last 16 odd months of the pandemic infused disruption or the crisis, as one may tend to look at it, has infused a sense of urgency within Indian industry to be able to leverage the potential of technology to drive far, far superior business outcomes as well as move more resilient operating models into fairly uncertain futures. That's pretty much from me for now, folks. The 2021 report on accelerating to a connected future will shortly be available. Stay tuned with us, and we will be soon sharing details of where you could pick up your copy of what is truly a fascinating report of Indian industry sentiments towards technology adoption to drive superior outcomes. That's pretty much from my side. That was your host, Arjun Vishwanathan. Stay tuned with us, and we'll be back with the next segment in just a moment. Welcome back, and I hope you enjoyed the snippet and the summary of the research that we conducted. I would now like to bring this conversation forward and welcome Mr. Abhishek, who's the partner for telecom, media and technology and digital, Africa, India, and the Middle East, business consulting for Ernst& Young, to come forward and deliver his keynote on how 5G can truly transform businesses and industry by itself. Please put your hands together for Abhishek.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for your time today. I am humbled by the opportunity to deliver the keynote address during this prestigious event. I think the subject is very interesting, right? 5G and its applications, particularly in the enterprise and particularly in the enterprise domain, where we are seeing a lot of activity around it. If I look into it, over the last 5 years, 5G has created a buzz around technology, uh, both in business B2B circles as well as B2C circles, and also in government circles as well. We see a lot of governments using 5G as an enabler to launch next generation technologies, citizenship enablement, etc. And businesses looking at 5G in a very different context going forward, which we hadn't witnessed before during any of the technology generations that came into play. Uh, and we fundamentally believe that 5G is a true disruptor that has emerged and is going to pave the way for a world that is going to change shape and possibly lead to a evolution of what you can say a converged world in terms of what we have been talking about over a long period of time across telecom, IT, media, enterprise applications, etc. I think over the next 4 to 5 minutes, what I would like to speak about is to give a brief overview of 5G, then talk about the opportunities which 5G presents, and finally talk about the challenges which 5G which a 5G ecosystem has at this point of time. Because we seriously believe that there is a long way to go as far as 5G is concerned, and we are just sitting at the tip of the icebergs. I think fundamentally, I would like to begin by saying that 5G is changing the way we build and utilize networks. So whether it's a service provider, whether it is a technology player, whether it's a hyperscale, whether they are emerging players like Mavner, there is these are both challenging and exciting times. So what we are seeing is increasingly 5G is posing opportunities and questions for all the players in the ecosystem that we look into it. Maybe on a very simplistic way, 5G is like an incremental upgrade to 4G. However, it's fundamentally different from the way we look at networks, we look at technologies and how we drive that. Uh, some of the key aspects which remain around 5G is obviously everybody knows, but I would reiterate again, it's around ultra low latency, ultra high reliability, uh, uh, say efficiency, energy improvements, if energy consumptions, and driving what you can say low latency, high reliability applications that we are looking at. One of the key aspects which all of us have been enamored by is the impact around slicing. I think 5G brings slicing into play, which would help deliver applications to both enterprises and consumers in a way that we haven't seen in the past. And that's where maybe the biggest application of 5G will bring into play. Uh, Now I would like to focus on the use cases which 5G is able to drive. So 5G, obviously IoT and 5G play is a big enabler which is coming into play, which is helping us drive applications like use cases going forward around AR, VR, AI, smart factory, etc. that we are talking about. But one of the key areas that I would like to touch upon is 5G's role in delivering edge computing. I think we have over the last decade, what we have seen is emergence and exponential growth of cloud. And what we will continue to see is the growth of cloud going forward, particularly within this pandemic concept and etc. The digitization within the organizations, the cloud computing, etc., have grown. Uh, and as we see, users across enterprise and retail segment are demanding smaller, faster, and cheaper devices and applications which they can use in their day-to-day life. This will see a completely significant shift in the way we have seen computing happen over a period of time. And I think that's where 5G will be able to deliver what we call is connected anything, immersive media, multi-access edge computing, and virtual private networks, all at a very smaller, faster, and cheaper way that we are looking at it. So I think edge computing will be one of the key applications which 5G can drive and help deliver it over a period of time. Obviously, there will be challenges which will exist and which we will talk about later. The next thing that I would like to highlight is how much is the opportunity that we are looking at. As per our estimates, and we have done a lot of analysis around it, what we think is that by 2026, the 5G enabled ecosystem with various elements would be roughly around $1.2 trillion. And all of you would be like, wow, this is a huge pie to look into it. And however, this value chain is not restricted to the traditional telecom operators, but it is open to hyperscalers, which are doing a lot of work around this. It is open to technology players like Dell, etc., who are doing a lot of work around this. It is open to new emerging players who are exploiting this opportunity and driving it forward. Most of this opportunity will come across applications, which will drive around something like 40 to 50% of this value chain that we are speaking about, and which is a very large chunk of the value that we are looking in as part of this. Overall, what we see is that the 5G's impact will start to emerge, and it is starting to emerge in countries like North America, Western Europe, developed APAC, Japan, China are the, what you can say, one of the early adopters of this. And other regions will adopt slowly as we look into it. Emerging Asia will maybe see the impact of 5G coming in at around in the later parts of 2023, 2025. That's what we are looking at it. Uh, Finally, what I would like to talk about is some of the challenges that we are looking at in 5G. So I think there's a lot of hoopla around 5G. 5G can do slicing, 5G can do low latency applications like AR, VR will become reality here. Gaming would be at a different level. Edge computing will go into a different dimension as far as 5G is concerned, and it will completely transform the enterprise applications ecosystem that we are looking at. However, what I would like to talk about here is some of the challenges that we are seeing in this particular space. And obviously, there is a lot of interest from all of you sitting here and all of you looking at it from the overall dimension that we are looking at it. I think the first biggest challenge is that business case is still very challenging. We did a recent survey within EY where leading CEOs of both telco and technology organizations thought that this business case in a B2C scenario doesn't exist as of now. And in a B2B element is the only area where it can look into it. And even there, almost 75% of the CEOs thought that it is difficult to recoup money over a period of time. Also, the business case remains challenging, and there are two aspects to it: B2B versus B2C. I think we see more B2P being the focus area going forward, and that is where the 5G adoption will happen in a very, what you can, except maybe certain large countries which might look at, or certain operators which have huge dominant cash, etc., and can drive 5G standalone networks. I think we will see 5G deployment in a clusterization way, where applications around either private networks, in areas like manufacturing, power and utilities, mining, etc., will come into play, or it will happen in areas around, say, AR/VR applications in enterprise play, or it will happen in areas around, say, for example, smart health, etc., where it will help deliver solutions which require either low latency, high reliability, and the aspects of slicing, etc., can come into play, particularly helping deliver B2B applications or B2B2X enabled platforms. So that's where we see the maximum usage going forward, and that's where we see some of the business case of 5G coming into play. The second aspect around which I would like to highlight the challenge remains is that regulatory aspects, right? There is still regulatory uncertainty, whether, say, for example, if you're looking at a 5G use case around private networks, whether spectrum will be allocated to enterprises or not, whether it will be allocated to, say, technology and hyperscalers like Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. How will they use them? Who will make the investment? Who will make the investment, and on what will be the time to market, and what will be the returns around it? So the regulatory environment and the associated concerns around time to market will remain a concern there. And again, and the last aspect that I would like to talk about is that all this space around, say, for example, next generation networks, 5G, etc., has gone through multiple changes and multiple loops. Digital transformation has taken a leap given the pandemic which happened, and almost all across the world, organizations are looking at digital transformation, particularly large enterprises are looking at digital transformation, how to drive that, how to look into it. And 5G can bring in certain applications which can help drive it. However, the return on investment on these applications still remains a question. And how much will enterprises invest? How much will their investment go into some of the 5G enabled applications would remain very critical going forward. So this is some of the challenges which we spoke about: A, the business case; B, the regulatory environment; C, the adoption that we are looking at. In conclusion, what I would like to say is, as we spoke about some of the impact of 5G. We spoke about the large scale opportunity that it presents, and the challenges it have. In the end, I would just say that 5G is just not another G. It has the potential to act as the single largest disruptor over the next 5 to 10 years, and create what we can call a completely converged space where different players are able to deliver different solutions to enterprises going forward. However, we have just begun the path. The challenges remain, and we would all have to work together in a partnership ecosystem driven environment to help deliver the benefits of the 5G both to the enterprises and the retail customers. So I would thank you again for the time provided to me, and hopefully you have a wonderful session going ahead. Thank you again.
Thank you, Abhishek. That was indeed very, very insightful. And I'm sure all of us stand much the better for having heard you expound your views on how 5G can be truly transformational towards industry. I now have the privilege of moderating a panel discussion with two very, very eminent gentlemen from within industry, which is going to focus on how, as connected devices proliferate and their capabilities expand, so too does the need for real-time decision-making untethered from cloud computing's latency and from connectivity. This shift in of computing into the edge, as more businesses in India look at leveraging the advantages of hyperconverged infrastructure to deal with increasing data gravity, manifests itself into the advent of how 5G can be a very, very potent lever for organizations to be able to draw intelligence, insights, and perhaps action in near real-time basis. I will be moderating the session, so let's move forward on that. Hello and welcome. I'm Arjun Vishwanathan, your host, and I'm going to be in conversation today with two very, very eminent gentlemen from within industry to talk about how the whole evolving concepts around 5G are promising to deliver superior and very, very significant gains to industry with its enterprise application. And to join me in talking about this, please put your hands together for Mr. Arvind Pandey, Managing Partner, Converging Consulting. Mr. Pandey, welcome, sir, and delighted that you could join us.
Thank you, Arjun.
And Mr. Vinod Krishnan, Chief Information Officer, Industars. Vinod, delighted and privileged that you could join us, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Gentlemen, I'm going to directly jump into this. You see, while telcos have by and large reported that 5G in the lab can deliver network speeds that are, well, more than 20 times faster than what LTE tended to promise, we may not be, or well, we aren't completely sure about the real world applications and the experience of enterprises as they will tend to adopt 5G in greater measure over the months and the years to come. And there's also quite a few unknowns as far as 5G is concerned. My primary question, and Vinod, if I could come to you, sir, is if you could decode and demystify 5G and it's in its enterprise role for this lovely audience that's tuning in today, that'll be of immense help, Mr. Krishna.
Sure. Sure. And let me just start by thanking you once again, Arjun, for the opportunity. I think as a CIO of a company in the telecommunications infrastructure space, 5G slash edge is obviously something that is very dear to our heart. It is likely to drive, significant expansion in the business footprint of industries. Having said that, if you look at this from a very, shall I say, enterprise perspective, I think it's fair to say that we've always had over the last several years mobility, but with restrictions. And the restrictions have come either in terms of bandwidth or in terms of latency. And of course, in terms of coverage, in the sense, obviously of, uh, the capacity that is available to you as well as the throughput that you're getting at any point in time. Now, I see 5G very fundamentally as the unlocking of that trade-off where we talked about are we going to have enough bandwidth when we are mobile, with the penetration of fixed broadband uh, slowly increasing. You've solved one side of the problem, which is what happens when your customer is static and requires that level or that grade of bandwidth for experience. Now the question is, how do you translate that to mobile? And that is one part obviously of the larger value of the 5G use case. The second is where you have no option for fixed. When we talk about connected cars or when you talk about
Indeed.
use cases where fixed doesn't help you very much or is prohibitive in the sense that you have multiple fixed and your mobile relative to them. I mean, I think the holy grail has always been the ability to get more bandwidth on a mobile basis, and that is exactly what I think the technology promises. And all indications are obviously that let's not talk specific numbers here, but the factor of improvement is huge. And therefore, as you're always aware with new technology, opening up to new technology starts with this basic premise that you are solving a problem. Now, what you do to apply that particular use case in your scenario as an enterprise, I think is what is going to differentiate obviously the players in this ecosystem. But I think the broad premise itself is very rich. I mean, if you look at it, this solving problems in the connected car space, in the telemedicine space, in the robotic operations, and many of these at one level sound like science fiction, but I think those of us who are in industry understand that these are fairly simple use cases provided you have reliable and consistent broadband available on the fly. And
That's
that is
very interesting. So
and
that
that
is indeed interesting, sir, because with your permission, I'm going to take that to
yeah,
you, Mr. Pandey. Now, there was a very sublime articulation of being able to demystify 5G to the point of it being a technology that will, well, enable a more connected enterprise or a connected world of sorts. Now, I give you a situation where there's factories at remote places, uh, tons of sensors on the shop floor. When you look at all of that and the intelligence that each of those sensors is creating and intelligence or data and data finally making it towards the enterprise to make it business insights, how do you see the role of 5G evolving as it comes into practical application?
Oh, absolutely. I think this is something which will bring 5G. If I take a step back, Arjun, and see what differently 5G offers and why at all 5G should be thought about for industrial application, what you talked about. I think unlike 3G era where it failed terribly, people have started talking about what technology is great, but what's so great if it's not able to help enterprise A to enhance revenue enhancement, B a user experience, C the process efficiency, and D the automation and big data analytics. What people are talking about. And finally, fifth is, which is very important, is to see ease of operation. So, is 5G is able to bring that into all this? Let's think about it. So, fundamentally, from a technology perspective, if I may say that, what difference this is between 4Gs and 3Gs of the world? Basically, three things. One is it brings an ultra low latency, which empowers it to take lot many application which we are not able to do with 4G. The second is enhanced mobile broadband, which basically gives the proximity and densified coverage to make sure that there is a capacity which is given to the user. And third is, which is Industry 4.0, which is what you talked about. Industry 4.0 gives a very value proposition to non-telco and enterprise market, which is what I think will be the turnaround story for 5G. Technology is fine, but it is very, very important to make sure that you are able to leverage. So therefore, what people are talking about is basically in terms of 5G is fine, but if I do a trial, where are the use cases? What are the applications we need to think about? And most importantly, what benefit brings to the enterprise as you talked about? So if I take that back and see what are the application which will drive, especially I'm talking about India, I think while connected car is a great example and it's already happening in Europe, but from a pandemic withdrawn situation where even Prime Minister Modi talked about the education sector is going to be a key driver and it has already started with the limited bandwidth and I think it fuel up with 5G coming in. So that's one area. Second, it sounds little very strange, but gaming industry is also very important, where there will be lot many application and online gaming, etc. The
Multiplayer, yeah.
reason, yeah, the reason why it will pick up is basically to make sure that there is a low latency. So all the applications like education, health sector, logistics, and industrial IoT is what is going to pick up.
Right.
Question
That's
is,
very, very beautifully articulated, sir. But I quickly want to get into Mr. Krishnan's point of view here. Mr. Krishnan, Ms. Pandey, very nicely spoke about the whole concept of Industry 4.0 and those tenets. Because
Right.
the way I'm seeing, the way we are observing it is, Indian industry by and large is rushing or accelerating towards adopting multiple frameworks, technologies, and so on and so forth. So there's Industry 4.0 that's at one end. There's 5G that's very beautifully converging. Now, when you look at all of this, how do you see 5G being able to bolster and further accelerate industry's ability to become more autonomous, become more intelligent?
Sure. I think very, very simply, this is actually a problem looking for a solution, and obviously 5G is one solution. In all the various methods by which you can achieve connectivity, it is fairly obvious that mobile is one of the easiest. I mean, you look at anything else, and the level of infrastructure that is required, is linear with the spread that you want to do. Whereas if you look at 5G, it is almost exponential in terms of the reach. And so your effect when you have a remote factory, and anybody who has worked with getting bandwidth to remote sites, as I have, and I'm sure
Knows the
several of these
nightmare that
CIOs,
it is.
exactly. And getting feasibility in, particularly when you talk about line of sight or RF links or whatever, and once you cross a particular bandwidth level, the ability to get reliable connectivity without a single point of failure is a nightmare. So I think simply the elimination of this nightmare is by itself, very intrinsic as a value thing. The other part is really you are talking about multiple points of data. Simple. I used to work with G, and a simple, I think use case of the aircraft engine. I think the numbers of sensors used to get into the thousands. The wiring around those sensors is, a challenge in and of itself, and makes a number of use cases prohibitive. Even today, connectivity back from sensor data, reliability of sensors, because you have a faulty sensor. Now, if you how do you solve for that? You cluster sensors so that you are able to detect the error between sensors. And if you do this in any way other than a 5G, then your cost of wiring these things up, your cost of connecting these sensors, and your absolute last mile is exponential. Here we are talking potentially a campus. Here
Yeah.
we are talking potentially an extended shop floor, a distribution center with multiple devices reporting, your ability to actually have, if you will, individual conversations with each of these devices. I think it is a use case that is actually made for the technology. Now, obviously, the devil is in the details, which is to say, what is your particular use case? And it's always a question of does fixed work better or mobility work better because of what you're doing. Now, for instance, when you're talking about a jet engine in operation,
Indeed. So.
this is an interesting example of the outside being fixed and substantial movement on the inside. So now you get into those granularity of use cases which say now my fix is not so good anymore because I'm actually in a moving environment there. And anybody who's carried their laptop between two rooms in a house understands what I'm talking
Understands.
about. These handoffs and these handshakes and these drops and these pickups. I think the 5G eliminates a number of those things, and I think is a very practical solution in these cases. I think it will be a case of horses for courses. One thing that I would certainly like to point out is that a lot of people look at these as either or. I think there is a lot of opportunity for complementary strategies where you say, I have fixed here, I have 5G here, and I'm able to make these talk to each other. I'm able to make these uh, return paths for each other. And I think there is a rich ecosystem there in terms of adding levels of reliability and levels of granularity.
Beautiful, sir. Because Mr. Pandey, I come to you with the same question. And I'd like you to further what Mr. Krishnan was also saying is industries' ability or industries' need today to reach that point or juncture where we can clearly and resolutely claim a place under the global map is to become autonomous. That's number one. Is to become self-reliant, which is the overall overarching theme, of course, and fundamentally become intelligent. In your view, how would you advise this wonderful audience today on even creating that blueprint? Because 5G is going to come in a while, but the blueprint needs to be ready today.
Exactly. So I think I will probably build on what Mr. Krishnan talked about in terms of industrialization and see sensors and the coverage and stuff like that. So there are five riders, if I may just put across in a way which will help to audience to understand and comprehend. One, of course, is, and I take example of industry basically. So one is the coverage. So coverage, if you talk about from a coverage point of view, it is probably not a key differentiator as far 4G and 5G is concerned. It is nice to have, and it will have, and it will also offer a capacity. But what's so great about it? Because the other cheaper technologies are able to offer that. The second part, which is very important, is to connect the machines to the data analytics. Which, for example, if I take an example of Hindustan Aluminium or the Birla Group, there must be a lot of sensor in terms of boiler and pot room and then various process industries. The health condition, hygienic to go and check the temperature as well as the boiler, etc., is something which is unhygienic, unsafety. If you have a sensor, if you are able to monitorize on a with a low latency, offer those data analytics sitting in Delhi or Bombay, no reason why would somebody go and that does that. So that's a second process automation what I talked about. Third is what is the data security, which is very very important. If you have a something near to the edge, and that's where 5G and edge kind of complement.
Yeah,
Yeah,
converge.
you don't have that old IPsec kind of a tunnel. You have a complete flat architecture which offers the edge connectivity, and like you said, autonomous platform with OTT and CDNs are able to offer with the open software or software as a service. You are able to then take care of security. The fourth very very important is that because of the AI and ML, you have a data and you are able to process in a way which 5G as an enabler, but able to turn around lot many data in terms of business case, process efficiency, for automation and lot many applications which you were not purview to. And fourth very important point is, which is what is a user experience. So, for example, if you really want to process those, somewhere sitting in one part of the world, let's say Naval is in Canada, you, because of the 5G open standard platform and the connectivity which a Google or a Amazon platform will have, you will have a flat connectivity and direct connectivity. So it is not just the man-to-man communication, but machine-to-machine communication, which certainly will help. So these are the user tweakers or handlers definitely will help to make sure that there is a business case and there is an application for the process efficiency, big data analytics, which we are talking about.
Well, that's beautifully articulated because, Mr. Krishnan, if I were to ask you, and I ask you on behalf of our audience today as well as overall industry, clearly 5G holds out immense promise and disproportionate gains for sure. I think both of you in your supreme articulation have fairly established that. And it promises to be a fascinating journey, yet one that is fairly complex. Now, in your essential guidance, if you were to converge the experience that you've had and be able to peer into the future, what are those pitfalls that organizations must avoid while perhaps rushing into this journey?
So, there's an old saying that says that if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And I think the challenge really is in the appropriateness of the solution to the problem. I think, Mr. Pandey just very, squarely hit the nail on the head when he said that you have to have your plans for what you're going to do with that data. All of your work will be irrelevant unless you're able to actually figure out, how you're consuming that. So collecting it is one thing, but then, you're only able to analyze it a week later and publish a report saying, hey, a week back you should have done this. That's not going to help anyone unless you got your logic of your business there, unless you have the logic in place to utilize those cases at the edge. I see these conditions, I activate my sprinkler system because there's a fire. I cannot send that data to an analyst somewhere to look at it, and after 15 minutes he says, oh, by the way, my analysis indicates that the machine is on fire. I'm so sorry. I mean, your conditions have to trigger your system, and I think my CEO has a great term for this, which he calls closed looping. And one of the biggest advantages of data collection close to source and data processing close to source is your ability to close loop, is your ability to react in time frames that today you can't. So today you do a lot of post facto analysis, a lot of post hoc analysis that says, why did this fail? Now, what you're doing when you have a technology that is this fast is you're saying, in the process of failure, what are my leading indicators? Can I catch this
Indeed.
thing before my sample breaks? Can I catch this thing before my product develops those errors that it is likely to develop based on my process? And can I salvage, something out of that run in a boiler case or whatever it is that we want to say? Can I prevent a more serious damage from happening? Because today, in many cases, I think in industry and especially in conventional industry, failure is the point at which report happens. You know, and
Indeed.
and your data is great at telling you that this is what kind of was supposed to happen. But I think really speaking, now you have to look at it as a kind of ability to, and if I have to use a very simple analogy, it is like your ability to freeze frame an event. You're seeing these things in a time window where you potentially have the ability to react to them
Yeah.
as they happen. And I think that is really the kind of analysis, the readiness that an organization will have to have is, if I could see this event in frames of, sub-second, what would I do with that information? Would I be able to do that something different? If I just want to do what I'm doing today faster, yes, okay, that's fine. And I think, in all of this, let's not miss what Mr. Pandey said about consumer grade user experience, end user experience. We in the industrial side are used, unfortunately, to something that is inferior to consumer grade experience.
Indeed, sir.
That's where everything starts. I mean, otherwise you would always think, if I went with a business case, I need to download a movie in 30 seconds. I doubt very much that anybody cares. And I'm
Indeed,
sure as a user you understand that the difference between 30 and 40 seconds may not be the end of the world. the challenge obviously comes that how does that translate to an industrial user? How does that translate to a enterprise user in terms of what they're able to do? As Mr. Pandey was saying, the ability to have a control and command center somewhere else, to have SMEs in real time reviewing, stuff on video and coming back. I mean, we all know one of the biggest challenges is finding SMEs and finding SMEs close to where you're working.
Working.
Now you take the problem to the SME who's sitting, as he said, in Canada. You know, you've done it in a way that, uh, and in real time.
And in real time, of course.
Now you've done something that you couldn't do before. But to come back to your question, if I'm not prepared for any of these, somebody else will beat me to the punch, and then I'll have to figure out
Indeed.
how they've done it. So a lot of work for us to say what would we do in our respective domains if we had the ability to see some of these things.
Interesting stuff. Because Mr. Pandey, we clearly seem to be veering around to a beautiful cross section of perspectives around how autonomy, intelligence, data, uh, low latency, and so on and so forth. But there's equally, and much against my wishes, I must bring this up, is this whole need for organizations to become more resilient, and therefore, if you were to boil that down, the security concerns. What, in your view, are your perspectives and your articulation on allaying those concerns or worries? Are they real? Are they unfounded?
So, in short, yes, they are real. Security is concerned, and that is where the security, especially in the cyber security side, Open Threat Platform (OTN) is properly known as coming up, which is kind of giving those platform and doing the real-time analysis. Uh, but I think important point is, and that's where I think the cost increases, and then this becomes an entry barrier to all those threat platforms which essentially are required for any operator or a non-telco operator to do.
But by
So,
and large, Mr. Pandey, 5G is as safe as any other technology when it has an overarching security framework overlaying it, is it?
oh yes, absolutely yes. So because of the encryption which a radio has, definitely from the last point of view, this is a far more algorithm which is encrypted in 5G as compared to anything. So as far as the radio waves are concerned, it is completely secure. So there are three steps: one, the radio layer; second, the transport layer, where you have multiple, whether tunnels or VRF or stuff like that, and then moving on to the open standard platform, where you are exposed to multiple open platform as a service kind of thing. The reason security is very important is that uh, because of the large entry barrier, there is a segmentation in terms of these markets. So, for example, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, transport as a service, and then radio capacity as a service. So there are five players basically which are coming in, and therefore to find that chain which lose the user experience and the security is something becomes all the more important. Not that each systems are not capable of, but it is important to have an end-to-end customer perspective, and that's where the security is important. While
Very
it does break about the entry barrier of 5G and brings about OPEX mode, which telcos and non-telcos were very repellent to, but because of the cloud and edge location, what we talked about, and infrastructure as a service, which the OTT players are giving, that entry barrier is coming along. However, having said that, the security becomes all the more important. So that's what I would like to say.
Very true, gentlemen. And this continues to be a brilliant conversation. But well, there is, of course, a paucity of time, and I know both of you gentlemen have a hard schedule ahead. But as an analyst, I'm continuing to be greedy, and I'm going to come to you each with one quick rapid fire question, if I may. And you've got about 30 seconds to answer that. Mr. Krishnan, will come to you. One big prediction as you speak today, with an eye to the future, where you think 5G is going to truly revolutionize enterprise business outcomes?
So I certainly think that the point of Industry 4.0 and remote site acceleration, the challenges that we spoke about in terms of finding bandwidth, that is the, if you will, the first silver bullet, because that is the one that requires very little beyond deployment of the network.
Indeed.
The use case is there. Connectivity is not a new thing, but connectivity where there is none, I think to me is the number one silver bullet. followed by others.
Beautifully articulated, sir. And Mr. Pandey, in conclusion, same question. One big prediction you're going to make on 5G's inflection with industry to revolutionize outcomes.
Good question. So I think telco will get sliced, and the people will get, like system operators, system integrators like Accenture, TCS of the world will take a value chain because of the multiple segmentation. That is one prediction. Second is rather than the OPEX model, people will go on the CAPEX model based upon the cloud as well as the platform. Third, which is the power of the SMEs will and enterprise will come with the software as a service, and there'll be lot many applications. We talk about gaming, health, etc., etc. But as we grow, there'll be multiple specific India application which will be developed in the garage. So that's a fundamental shift for the from a major enterprise to the SME kind of thing. And finally, the last one is that it is the customer user experience will pay for the entire value chain, not a technology as application.
Fantastic, gentlemen. Mr. Krishnan, Mr. Pandey. Unfortunately, that's what we have time for in this segment for today. But I can safely, on behalf of this audience, tell you that it has been nothing short of fascinating having this conversation with you. And I think all of us stand truly privileged for having heard your views, your perspectives, and of course, your thoughts and predictions on the foreseeable future. Mr. Krishnan, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Arjun.
Truly
Thank you
delighted.
so much.
Thank you, Mr. Pandey. Ladies and gentlemen, that was I, Arjun Vishwanathan, your host in conversation with Mr. Arvind Pandey and Mr. Vinod Krishnan. I hope you enjoyed this segment as much as I enjoyed moderating it. It was truly scintillating, and I think a true experience in going back and feeling like a student of technology, which all of us fundamentally have to be. That's all for us in this segment. Stay tuned, and we'll be back with the next segment in just a moment. Welcome back, and I hope you enjoyed that conversation that I moderated with Vinod as well as Arvind. I truly learned so much from it. But folks, as we move forward in the session, in this episode of the Connected CIO series, just a reminder, please do not forget to fill out the feedback form. Your feedback and your recommendations and experiences are invaluable to us in helping us curate more and more such events for you. As we move forward, I equally have the pleasure of moderating a scintillating panel discussion, which is going to be centered around the rapid adoption of edge computing, as it has opened up new business avenues for organizations who are considering and consolidating their presence across the edge computing landscape. Edge computing by itself, and of course, coupled with mobile edge computing and 5G networks, enables and will superiorly enable faster and more comprehensive data analysis, perhaps almost at source, creating, therefore, the opportunity for industry to drive deeper insights, faster responses, and of course, improve customer service. Hello and welcome back. I'm Arjun Vishwanathan, and today I'm going to be, well, in a truly fascinating conversation with a set of very, very eminent leaders in their own right from industry. We're going to be speaking about, in the previous segments, you saw how we spoke about the ability for industry and organizations to adopt 5G to drastically reduce latency. In this particular segment, we're taking that conversation forward to speak about how the confluence of 5G and edge computing will not just reduce network latency by processing data closer to the end user, and therefore, while the midterm benefits are enormous, the ability for edge computing to truly transform organizations and help them craft the intelligent enterprises of tomorrow remains significant, and industry will need to garner as well as view this potential in a much more radically transformed manner. And to talk to me about all of this, please put your hands together to welcome, and in no specific order, Mr. Hilal Khan, Vice President IT, Honda Cars Limited. Hilal, welcome, and we are delighted and privileged, sir.
Thank you so much. Pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much.
Xavier Kurian, Director Solutions and Alliances, Dell Technologies. Xavier, welcome, delighted as usual.
As always, great to be here, Arjun.
And Mr. Ajay Nijhavan, Head Networking and Communication Segments, Intel India. Ajay, welcome, and we are truly privileged that you could join us, sir.
Thank you, Arjun, for inviting me to the panel discussion.
Thank you. Gentlemen, we've got a fascinating 30 odd minutes ahead of us, and I'm directly going to jump into it to maximize the time that we do have with us. And Mr. Khan, if I could come to you, sir, from your perspective of industry, how do you see the confluence or the convergence of 5G as well as edge computing fundamentally being embedded such in the fabric of the organization that it's able to help industry build resilient intelligence? Mr. Hilal Khan.
Yeah. So Arjun, thank you so much. Uh, see, let me start with business first, technology second, right? While my while my designation is VP Information Technology, but I believe that um, for us to do justice to our work, we have to first think business and then technology. So if I talk about IoT and 5G and edge first, that's not really going to serve any purpose. I'll be definitely talking about it. See, Arjun, what we really need to understand as to what is happening in the industry. I'm talking industry in general, and then auto industry in particular.
Indeed.
Uh, Last time when we connected, I spoke about case. The full form of case is connected, autonomous, shared, and electric. And whenever we talk about the business and the business challenge, we have to talk about the business challenges in the current context of politico-economical scenario. The way India is progressing, or the way India is going to adapt many more things in the area of automotive, including the cafe norms which are around the way we are emitting and managing our carbon. Things are going to be very, very difficult for the auto industry. And hence, before I talk about the adoption of 5G or IoT, it is really important to understand that we are entering either by choice or by compulsion. Why I'm saying compulsion? Because people talked a lot about digital transformation.
Indeed.
But thanks to the pandemic, earlier we were supposed to make a ROI case for a digital transformation in the organization, but today it's a reality. It's the need of the time, and the time as such is compelling us or telling that we have to go for that because the customer behavior is changing, market dynamics are changing. Similarly, for the auto industry, we are going for the connected as a choice, as a compulsion, both. And when I say connected, let me give you the first example, and that's about the connected car. The moment I say connected car, why? Connected car is my choice, or is the choice of the customer, or is a choice of the situation? The choice of the situation because of the fun, safety, and convenience. And when the car is connected, it is connected using IoT. Since it is connected, it is generating data. Since the data is generated, there is a need to utilize that data, compute that data, and since lot and lot data is generated, that data need to be first computed and transmitted. And once this data is transmitted, we talk about the network, we talk about the bandwidth, we talk about what we are going to do with this data.
That's an
So
interesting point, Mr.
eventually,
Khan. With your permission, I just love what
yes,
you made because I want to take that to you, Xavier. Xavier, you're at the heart of technology, and Mr. Khan so beautifully said it's business first. And because we are generating so much data, the influence of technology becomes that much more. At your role in Dell Technologies, what's your perspective on how you approach this?
Arjun, and let me put things into perspective first, right? Um, uh, Going forward, if you look at what connected technology in the automobile industry is about, it's about doing 3D rendering in real time at every device that is on the road. And by device, I mean car, right? A few years ago, if you asked me to do that kind of 3D rendering, you'd have a small cluster that did it a few hours and gave out that result. A lot of that lot of that work is now happening in a car, real time, and it is modeling everything that is around it, right? Which is what autonomous driving and some of those technologies are about. Now, autonomous driving is the other end of the spectrum. There are a lot of pieces in that spectrum. The most fundamental part, the inside side of that connected car spectrum is that you have a set of sensors in the car that pick up data about vibration or sound or a bunch of those parameters that roll up into the manufacturer for maintenance or whatever analysis that needs to be done. There are both ends of the spectrum, and there are n number of pieces in between that. In between that. Now, in all parts of the spectrum, not all data needs to go out to the cloud, right? No, not all data needs to be computed on the device either, at the car either. There's some data that you can collect and directly send back out to an edge computing device. There's some data that you can collect and send backhaul all the way to the data center. There's some data that you'll collect, process inside the car, and you're done with it. You don't really need anything more. But there's always going to be some amount of that data as well that can get sent back to the edge or to the data center, so that you can improve the future, so that you can improve self-driving, right? Now, the question that at every step of the way we need to ask is, what is the amount of data? Where do you need to compute it? Do you need to compute it on the device? Do you need to compute it at the edge? Do you need to backhaul it to the data center? You want to compute as much as possible on the device. If it's not practical to compute it on the device, compute it on the edge. If it's not possible to compute it at the edge, backhaul it to the data center.
Indeed.
So there are two factors to this: how much data, how much compute, and obviously the question of latency always remains. So there's no clear path to this. You can't really sit down and say that I'm going to backhaul all of the data, or I'm going to not backhaul any data. There's got to be a mix of all of this, and all of it makes sense. And I love what Hilal said about this. It all makes sense only if the business really wants to. If it makes sense.
That's actually an interesting point, because Ajay, I'm going to bring that to you. You heard Hilal and Xavier very supremely articulate the need for business strategy to be orchestrated, and therefore the ability of data to come in, drive, the ability for organizations to leverage it and create action. My question to you is, when you kind of boil this all together, how do you see edge computing as well as the confluence and convergence of 5G with it helping industry build resilient intelligence?
Okay, yeah. So Arjun, I would start. I'll say, in my opinion, I think 5G, we all know, is really opening up a new era for industrial automation, mainly with the emergence of artificial intelligence. And yeah, we are already talking about it. This will lead to really lots of private 5G or 5G edge deployments to come in. And the biggest challenge here will be, how the enterprises will really maintain, like really a segmentation here. How will they really provide a consistent experience with cloud-like agility, and yet process the workloads at the edge for ultra-low latency? And majority of these deployments, I would say, will also have another challenge of, really ensuring a zero trust environment, because in large data centers, you really have good controls, but they are kind of lacking towards the edge. So if you see, I would say other aspect, I would say earlier majority of industries were using Wi-Fi or wired environments, and with 5G, we can overcome all these limitations laid by such prior deployments. And this will also enable many new use cases in addition to connected cars, which could be consumed by industries like things like AGVs, IGVs, robots, and all of these will have to be regulated and controlled through 5G edge cloud architecture, providing really ultra low latency command and control. Further, I would say emergence of 5G. One other problem which would really come is with the emergence of 5G and 6G. there'll be really high data transfer rates and really faster mobility. So with 5G, we can expect a speed to the tune of 500 kilometers per hour. If users will be seamlessly connected to network at such high speeds of 500 kilometers per hour. The car example which you gave, while the cars cannot really reach that speed, but even at really high speed, they have to be really connected.
Indeed.
And in such high scenarios, to keep the user context protected in the application will be a critical requirement. And this would require applications and workloads to move in line with the mobility across on-premise data centers, edge, and cloud. And I think at Intel, we have kind of envisioned this, and we have created an open source one API for various accelerators like VPU, GPU, and FPGAs. Uh, we also have common instruction set for our different Intel CPU chipsets like Xeon ST and Xeon D. And this would help in development and seamless migration of the application and workloads across all the three major cloud environments.
So that's very
that is on-premise.
With your permission, if I could bring that conversation to Hilal. Hilal, sir, clearly between Xavier and Ajay, you heard the articulation of how OEM service providers are ready with the technology to help industry actually leverage the potential of technology to drive far, far unimagined or perhaps unthinkable results as we move into the future. But my question to you, sir, is if you could elaborate on the point of when you said business first, how would you guide organizations and other CIOs and IT leaders on approaching this whole convergence of 5G and edge computing into the very digital fabric of thinking?
So, let me articulate it in a much more, simple language once again. I will try my best to give you a perspective as to how a typical CIO must be thinking about it. So, he has to think that whether he's going to talk about edge 5G or IoT first, or whether he's going to talk about the real situation of the business use case. In fact, Xavier very nicely, talk about it. What is my challenge? Say, for example, I'm not talking about connected. I'm saying, many business cases across my business value chain, be it in the area of manufacturing or purchasing, or after sales, or spare part business, or car sales. Things are becoming more and more connected. Things are becoming more and more real time. The customer can't really wait. The market is becoming much more competitive and dynamic in nature. What is really important for me is the speed of computation, the response time, right? The cost of the bandwidth, the cost of the computation, right? And then there is a business use case. And these are the underlying parameters when I'm evaluating the technology. The moment I am clear about my business use case and my key performance indicator in terms of quality, cost, delivery, services, whatever, that can eventually be converted into some kind of back-end technology solution of the combination of IoT, 5G, Edge, all put together. What is really important, the way Xavier explained, we need to understand and prioritize through our business use case as to what needs to be processed, where it needs to be processed, what all should reside where, and how eventually I am going to utilize it for my analytics, for my artificial intelligence, for XYZ, for the customer, for the OEM. Now, for me to knit all these components together of my technology performance indicators and the business use case indicators or key goal indicators of my business, there is an underlying technology. And thanks to partner like Intel and Dell, today we have lot and lot options available. The way the need is evolving, the solution is also evolving.
No, that's beautifully said.
Or the solution is coming and we are educated in a way that we start adapting. So what is really important? One, recognition of the available technology. And second, adoption of the available technology. Between recognition and adoption, there is a time period, and that is the evolution of the CIO, evolution of the industry, and the time taken by partners like Dell and Intel to market themselves so that we start adopting it, realizing the benefits.
Oh,
So
that's
this is
beautiful.
going hand in hand.
No, very, very well said, sir. Xavier, I see you're already ready to.
I absolutely love the way you put it, Hilal, and let me put things in perspective, right? Now, the technology that we are talking about is changing at a pace that is insane today, right? If you looked at the sensor ecosystem 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, and now, there have been radical shifts, right? I remember when we used to do thermal sensors. Thermal sensors used to be a single unit by itself. Today, you will get thermal, vibration, sound, and humidity all in one sensor that is 1/20th the size of what it used to be, right? The technology of how you communicate that, there used to be a time when it was all SCADA signals, right? Insanely difficult to go translate. That has changed. So the technology, every piece of this technology is evolving at a pace like nothing else. I'll give you an example. There's a very fundamental technology called shadow sensing, right? And shadow sensors, we have them in our house as well. Nowhere close to the kind of resolution that you need, but shadow sensors can do beautiful things. Shadow sensors are impressive in terms of safety. For example, in the Dell factory that we have in India, we put in a bunch of shadow sensors so that people don't get their hands stuck in places where they could get hurt. And it took and what it was an investment done towards employee worker safety, right? And but the results of that were phenomenal. High resolution shadow sensors. All you're doing is making sure that the machine doesn't activate when a person's hand is in there. Reaction times are at the nanosecond level, right? The reaction times are at a nanosecond level. All the compute is done on the machine, right? It's done at that shadow sensor. You don't need that data, right? All you need to know is that an incident happened, right? The backhaul of that data to the edge, to the factory environment is in kilobytes every time an incident happens. Otherwise, you don't need any data, right? But it serves a purpose.
Indeed.
It serves a purpose. Now, every one of these technologies, and Hilal put that beautifully, every one of these technologies need to have a net result, need to have the first thing to go look at is what is your objective. In the case of what we did with shadow sensing, it was about employee safety. If you do a logistics, if you look at logistics, it should be about optimizing logistics, reducing time to delivery, reducing cost of delivery. There has to be a return on there has to be a tangible outcome of what you're doing. But the technology, Arjun, today is absolutely there.
It's absolutely there, because this is what I'm going to bring to you, Ajay. The technology exists, and like Hilal and of course Xavier clearly mentioned, it's going to have a net result. From Intel's perspective, Ajay, how do you see the opportunities within industry that are presented with the availability of technologies to meet net result actionable business outcomes?
Yeah, so I think 5G we all know is really, I would say ushering in new era of precision manufacturing, which is Industry 4.0. And I would say this era would be marked both by automation and optimization. So, I would say this technology will be used both to automate the industry, but also to optimize. And, you have examples like computer vision, which, I think we had, Xavier just talk about the shadow sensing case, but, when you really go to things like computer vision, you would really need very high bandwidth and low latency requirements, which can be effectively served only with 5G. And these technologies can intelligently automate complex workflows for the factories. And production is easier to turn on and off based on the demand which can really increase the efficiency and the output of the factory. Likewise, I would say, I think Xavier again talked about the safety. I would say, there are industries really trying to use drones, to keep their factory workers safe. They are choosing to delegate the most dangerous tasks to autonomous vehicles and remote controlled robots. So these are the kind of things I would say which are really coming up. And I'll say, in Intel, we are again playing a very important role within Industrial 4.0. We have, I would say, a couple of mix of solutions for the edge specifically. First, I would say on the silicon itself, we have, different components which are kind of optimized for edge. Along with that, we also have, I would say, developer tools, which would again help these workloads which would reside on the edge. And in addition to that, we also have, something what we call as edge stack software. And, I think people generally don't really relate Intel to that, but Intel really has an edge stack, which is called as Smart Edge. And Dell is one of our partners for Smart Edge. It's a product which could be, used by industries right now. And, it's being used by both industries as well as, I would say system integrators to develop edge use cases. So that way, we similarly have another version which is called as Smart Edge Open. This is another stack which is more of an open source stack, and which typically targets infrastructure and app developers who are building optimized edge platforms.
Interesting.
So yeah, so Intel does provide, I would say, flexible options that cater to diverse models and varied stakeholders, like end customers, partners, the developers, for the edge deployment and the use.
Interesting, because I do have a view on the clock, gentlemen, and we've got limited time left. Mr. Khan, it brings us to a very important question. And all of you very beautifully articulated let me rephrase this, the convergence of business needs and results with technology, which are both evolving at a very rapid, mature rate. My point is, in the hurry perhaps to adopt technology because technology exists, that's number one. And of course, business metrics are also changing. What are some of the pitfalls that should classically be avoided when approaching this journey, Mr. Khan, of edge computing and 5G?
See, when I look at the adoption of the technology, what I really need to understand that, for a particular application or for a particular business use case, there is an underlying technology and there is a stack of technology. When I'm saying stack of technology, there is a front-end application, there is a back-end database, there is infrastructure, there is a network connectivity piece, there is a storage behind it. What I would look at is simplifying my landscape in terms of manageability. I should not end up creating a heterogeneous environment. I should try to create minimum windows of manageability and partners. My cost of the complete stack of technology, how it is going to be minimum, or rather, if not minimum, relevant to the outcome of my business use case. And when I am putting this all together, I have to understand as to how and at what time it is going to make a business sense to me, right? For example, I'm disconnecting from 5G and IoT and edge, and I'm talking about AI, for example. And say, for example, I am talking about a robotics process automation for my account payable or for my warranty analytics. I'm just talking loud. I will be coming back to 5G, IoT, and edge. Don't worry, right? So if I plot on x-axis and y-axis and try to understand that my x-axis is time and y-axis is cost, I have to see that my cost of manpower is constantly increasing and my cost of technology is constantly going down. When, in a country like India, when the cost of manpower is still much reasonable, especially for the repetitive and redundant jobs, bringing the RPA is very important. This, concept as such is very important. But at what time? That junction I have to decide, realizing the technology and the benefit of the technology. I have to find out at what time I have to actually adapt it for what purpose. Now coming back to 5G, IoT, and Edge. Why I have given the RP example? I think it should be now clear to you. I have my manageability, I have my technology landscape, and I have my cost. And on the other hand, I have my business use case. I have to plot it that how it is going to make a business sense to me. Adapting Edge is not my fascination. I am not a CIO driven by Edge or cloud or anything else. For me, my business is supreme.
Indeed, sir.
And thanks to these partners, they are helping my business. They are making my life easier by their innovative solutions. But in what quantity, at what time, that is something that we have to be very, very careful about.
Thank you so much, sir. Ajay, before I come to you, Xavier, Ajay, in conclusion, now that you've heard the articulation of really what industry needs, what industry expects, if you were to sum it all up in about a minute, how do you think at Intel and of course in your overall partnership with Dell Technologies, are you approaching and assisting industry to build resilient organizations of tomorrow?
So I'll say, I think Hilal really articulated well in terms of, when he really needs the different technologies and what would be the right time. I would say, just like to add one thing here. I think, there is emergence of tech superpowers, as we call them at Intel. There are four tech superpowers, which is cloud, 5G, intelligent edge, and AI. And all these four are kind of, really evolving very fast, and they would continue to manifest themselves by providing innovative solutions for a long time. And I would say technology and businesses are kind of merging, and business minus digitization and technology would be really rare in times to come. So I think if we really look at maybe 4 or 5 years down the line, that's the time frame which I think companies and organizations have to really look at, and then they have to go to their drawing board and really see, then plan themselves, to really address the evolution of this technology and how it will really change. Like, I would say, yeah, today we have that cost arbitrage over the developed countries with lower labor costs, but, it can change anytime because, the technology with industrial IoT, with IoT 4.0, sorry, with IoT 4.0, the advantage which India enjoys today with lower cost, it will go away, and we would be competing globally with global company, I would say companies in other countries, which would have equal cost and much better quality. So yeah, I think it's yeah, definitely one has to really weigh these pros and cons and what is the right time. That's definitely an important aspect.
No, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Xavier, I don't think there's a question here to you as much as your view.
So first, I want to say I disagree with Ajay a little bit. I think we're a little far away from losing that cost arbitrage advantage, right? So, so that I want to put that point out there. But let me give you a perspective of, so what is it that's happening in industry, right? I want to just sum this up in saying that where this is happening. I'll give you a perspective of what we are doing, right? Now, as Hilal said, this environment and this adoption cycle is actually quite complicated. There are a lot of things to look at. Will it all work together? How do I go and deploy something in a factory floor? Can I afford to go build a data center in each factory or each data collection point? Very often, many of these things simply don't make sense. We started thinking about this a long time ago, right? About what is it that we are going to do to take out some of these challenges. On the infrastructure side, that was an easier solve, right? We've been good at it. Our engineering teams have been at it for quite a long time. So we went and solved the engineering problems fairly fast, right? So for example, we went and built out an edge device, edge server that can go run at 55 degrees centigrade. It has a filtered bezel. You can go put it in a factory, mount it on a rail in the floor, in the factory floor, and no problems. As long as crossing 55 degrees in a workplace is fairly rare nowadays. Unless you're in a steel plant or something like that, that's not going to happen. But we went and built the platforms for it, and that happened fairly early on. The second piece was building the architectures, and we went and partnered with a bunch of people. Intel was one of them. We went and partnered with small people that are doing cutting edge startups, really, that are doing cutting edge stuff in many of these things around the world, right? Some of my team goes and does it with startups in India, and we bring all of that technology in, certify it, make sure that it works properly, put the architectures together, and then go and say that, hey, if you're thinking of safety for shadow sensing, we've got we've seen this with 4 different people. We've seen it in 8 different deployments. We've learned from each of those deployments. We've documented it, and we'll certify that it will work. We'll support, Dell will support it, and we'll backline L2 and L3 support back to the person that actually wrote the code, right? Might be a small startup somewhere, and need not be in India as well. For example, we've got these small startups sitting in Israel, for example, that are doing some really cutting edge stuff.
Really cutting edge stuff.
True. Really cutting edge stuff. How can we bring some of that technology in? How can we certify that technology? Because as a customer, I don't expect a customer to reach out to somebody in Israel, buy a small component that costs $40 and implement it in enterprise. Because the moment you implement it in enterprise, if the thing fails, you've got problems happening.
Indeed.
Which is where some of our aggregation comes in, and some of the strength of Dell Technologies as a portfolio comes in, where we can go take these technologies that we see and the best of from around the world, put it together, certify it, build the entire stack. And it's not only about building the edge platform, but building how you're going to go bring it in, how you're going to analyze the data, how you're going to utilize the data, how you're going to associate that data with your existing data. For example, how do you associate logistics data with your Salesforce or your whatever else you're using for supply chain?
Correct.
That entire ecosystem is what we worked on and put these larger solutions around.
Fantastic. I mean, I couldn't agree with each of you more, but well, that's pretty much what we have time in this particular segment for, gentlemen. It has been fascinating, and clearly we spoke about the compelling cost advantages, or perhaps the whole concept of industry being able to build a more resilient march forward with intelligence embedded in the very fabric of how organizations tend to drive thought processes has been fascinating. Mr. Khan, Ajay, Xavier, privileged to have spoken with you. Thank you for sharing your views. Thank you very much for joining us today, Mr. Khan, Ajay, and Xavier.
Great.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so
Thanks
much. Wonderful learning. Thank you so much.
And for the audience, that was I, Arjun Vishwanathan, in conversation on the convergence of 5G and edge computing. Stay tuned with us, and we'll be back in just a moment. Thank you, Xavier, Ajay, and Hilal. It was truly scintillating to have been in this moderated conversation with you. We truly learned a lot. As we bring this episode to a close, a few points that I would like to share with you, such that you can take back for implementation within your IT strategies and overall business strategies, which is that technology by itself, and specifically 5G and edge computing, are two inextricably linked technologies that are both poised to significantly improve the performance of applications and enable huge amounts of data to be processed in real time. 5G promises to increase speeds by up to 10 times of 4G, something that has been adequately manifest to us, whereas mobile edge computing promises the ability to reduce latency by bringing compute capabilities into the network closer to the end user. Edge computing, of course, also holds the promise of significantly reducing network latency by processing data closer not just to the end user, but the midterm benefits are equally important. To achieve ultra low latency necessary for further use cases like autonomous drones, something that industry is viewing today in far more significant measure than ever before, or remote telesurgery in the very, very critical healthcare segment, the combination of 5G and edge will be necessary and perhaps imperative. This means both a bigger and a faster pipe in conjunction with a shorter distance for the data to travel. The crux of the matter, as far as 5G is concerned, is that it offers compelling cost advantages over long term evolution, or LTE as it were known, for enhanced mobile broadband in denser urban locations and potentially fixed wireless areas and access areas in certain suburban ones where fiber has been widely deployed. However, something that we have understood over the last 1 hour is that for industry to truly forge a resilient, resolute march forward towards building intelligent enterprises, the coupling in 5G and edge computing cannot be underscored enough and will be extremely important. Similarly, and in the same breath, as connected devices proliferate and their capabilities expand, so too does the need for real-time decision making untethered from cloud computing's latency. When you bring all of this together, the crux of the matter truly is that 5G and edge computing are going to be critical foundational pillars as far as technology is concerned to help Indian industry forge more resolute, confident, and intelligent forays ahead into value acceleration into the future. That's pretty much from our side, folks. We hope you enjoyed this event today on behalf of Dell Technologies and Intel. We are truly privileged to have brought you this event today. And as we close, please do not forget to fill out the feedback formula. Like I said, your feedback's very, very important and invaluable to us. Stay safe, get vaccinated. God bless.